Good evening and welcome to the Monomoy Regional School District School Committee meeting for Thursday, January 11th, 2024, beginning at 6:30. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. And the first item on our agenda, or the next item on the agenda, is public comment. Do I have anyone for public comment? Seeing none, we will move right along to the approval of the MRSC meeting minutes for December 14th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain?
Aye.
I mean opposed, abstain?
Abstain.
Jess and
Abstain.
Tina?
Yeah.
Did you get that? Okay. Excellent. Moving right along to reports and discussion, we will start our evening with Ms. Melissa McGuire.
Good evening, Melissa McGuire, Director of Student Services. Happy to be here to share special education pupil personnel budget. And Miss Vanna behind me is going to help me move us along. So I usually like to start with something in the past several years. Oh, she's really moving us along. I've always said that, our special education costs are very visible, but our special education students and disabilities are very invisible. And so, really keeping in mind, understanding the needs of our students regarding special education. So I love this quote, and it actually goes for a lot of people. Not everyone learns the same way on the same day. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about what we're doing in special education. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the students that are receiving services, our out-of-district costs, what mitigates those costs, which is a very exciting presentation for you tonight, our specialized programs, our summer services, which are called extended year services, contracted services, overall district services, operational costs, grants we have, and then, of course, our budget requests. And we'll conclude with, as most of you know, a video. So just to put in perspective our responsibility, we are required to educate students with disabilities from age 3 to 22 and provide a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. The least restrictive environment is really starting with being educated with your peers up to a residential program because you have very unique needs and you are not with your typical peers. Thank you. So looking at our enrollment, first we look at our October 1 numbers because that's what we need to report to the state in that given day, how many students are receiving special education services. So on October 1st, we had 335 students, and as of January, we have 341 students. We have always stayed under the state rate of special education services, and for me that doesn't really mean a whole lot, but it just means that we are really doing a good job evaluating and identifying students that require special education services. So what I wanted to do is break down our enrollment so that you get a sense across our schools, how many students we're serving. And I broke it down not just by school, but also what I added on to this was our current preschool students. Now, that's not the total number of preschool students. It's the total number of preschool students receiving special education services, okay? So right now we have 37, and the anticipated number is 42 by the end of the year. So that gives you our right now, the 304 and 37 is the 341. And then we will add on students as they come in and turn 3 into our preschool. Now, what that doesn't include, in the numbers that are in red, which are really important, we currently have 69 students across the school, all 4 schools, that are in evaluation for eligibility. Now, not all 69 students are going to be eligible. There will be a finding of no eligibility, meaning that there is not an educational disability that impacts them, that requires specialized services. Which includes instruction, specialized instruction, and related services, OT, PT, speech, reading, whatever disability we identified that we were evaluating. So there are currently 69 students in evaluation, and for the remainder of the year, we still have an additional 48 evaluations to conduct. So as you can see, those numbers ebb and flow significantly across the year. But also, which is nice, is there are 28 students who had a finding of no eligibility, meaning that they were reevaluated, they were receiving services, they met their goals, and they no longer require special education services. That's a celebration in my mind. Love when that happens. Love congratulating students when they're making that kind of progress. So in that 69 and that 48, we'll see kids who will receive services. We'll continue to see kids who will no longer be eligible because they're making effective progress.
Melissa,
Thank
can
you.
I just ask a quick
Yes.
question? Is the 28 included in the 304?
No, that
Okay.
number, those numbers are not included in the 341, including the preschools,
Right.
because that includes preschoolers that are being evaluated, so that is not. So that's
Okay.
why that number is really important to watch, because it will go up and down. And if we looked across the years, proportionately, we've stayed pretty much the same. There's been definitely an increase since COVID, specifically in the category of emotional. So we've definitely seen an increase over the past couple of years in services. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about our amazing programs, and there we go. So we currently have 9 programs that across all 4 schools that support students with more significant special needs, whether it is a cognitive, whether it is a physical, a medical, a mental health, social, emotional, behavioral. We now have a program to support students across all 4 buildings, so we should be really proud of that. Our newest program Chatham Elementary, we used to have a program, I should say. It's not brand new, but we didn't have enough students to support a program at Chatham Elementary years back, so we now do have a program to support kids with significant disabilities. And then we have at Harwich Elementary, we have our IEL program, which we've had for many years, but we added the pre-K IEL program, if you remember, last year. That was an additional preschool, because we were seeing a significant number of students coming out of COVID, students who were not receiving early intervention and required specialized services. So we did see a nice bump in our pre-K programming. And so we have the 2 IEL programs that support primarily students on the autism spectrum, but also in the pre-K program, a little more developmental and cognitive disabilities as well. At HES, we have our SURF program, which supports our students with some social, emotional, and behavioral health needs. At our middle school, we have our Shell program, which is our intensive program. We also have the TIDE program, which supports more of our students with mental health and behavioral challenges. And then at the high school, we have a nice continuum of services. And of all of these, actually, which is really nice, we now have a continuum of services from elementary, middle, up to high school. We have our SAIL program for our intensive special needs students with more cognitive challenges. And then our SHORE program, which is our 18 to 22-year-old program. And our SAND program, which is our program for students with social, emotional, and behavioral challenges. So as you can see over the years, we've built a really nice continuum of programs for our services. And hold on to your hats, because I can't wait to show you the mitigating costs for us having these programs. So for our out-of-district is for students who we are not able to service because of the intensity and level of services of their needs. This includes day programs and residential programs. And again, the disabilities are unique that we do not have the ability to service them. So this year, currently, we have 13 students that are out of district. Now, next year, the projection, we have 12 because we do have a student that's coming home, that's coming back to the district. So I'm really, really excited about that. She's ready. She's going into the high school, so I'm thrilled. Guardians are thrilled, so we can't wait to have her come back. But my caution with this number is, again, sometimes there is a significant uniqueness that we're not able to support. We have come across in the past couple of weeks some students that have come out of state that have needs that were being serviced in out of district, and then we will now have to also provide them with that type of programming. So that number ebbs and flows a little bit, not tremendous, not as much as it used to because of the programs that we now have as well. Oh, sorry. All right, I did, the slide after this, I did edit a little bit because I forgot to add a program, but out-of-district considerations. So first, there's a big consideration, which is what's called the move-in law, and that's kind of what I just talked about. The move-in law means that when a student moves into our district and they are in, say, a residential program or an out-of-district program, we assume that program. We assume the cost of that. However, the move-in law is interesting. If the student moves in before April 1st, right, if they come into the district and they're an out-of-district program, the previous district they lived in assumes the cost for the remainder of the year and the following year. Now, that would be the same for us. If our student moved out of district to another district and they were, say, in a residential program and they moved in before April 1st, we would, again, assume that responsibility. If they move in after that, then we assume the responsibility. The only difference for out-of-district is the collaboratives. And, of course, we have our own Cape Cod Collaborative. If there's a student that moves in, say, from Boston to us, and they're going to a collaborative, you assume the responsibility fiscally that day. So that's the only difference in out-of-district. Again, unforeseen circumstances for students and disabilities that are unique that we are not able to provide the breadth of services that they need. So those are things that we consider for out-of-district.
I have a question.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Just a clarifying question. You said if a student moves in after April,
Yeah, I just realized I need to flip that. After April, the previous district assumes the remainder of the year and the following year.
okay.
Before April, they assume the rest of the year, and then we pick it up in the new
And
fiscal
is that
year.
because of the budget cycles?
No, it's because of its own law.
Okay.
And really what they were looking at, and if you talk to any of the kind of fiscal people, is they wanted to make sure there was some level of balance because they're such high costs. So they had to have a date where they felt that the previous district would continue to own basically that tuition. So not to burden the districts because typically budgets are already done.
Right.
And so to assume that would be a huge burden. But having said that, they also created the extraordinary relief through circuit breaker. So and that really does help when there is move-ins. I can tell you in my previous district, I had a year where there was $1 million worth of move-in. And so that's where extraordinary relief comes in because you get reimbursed that year for the burden basically of high tuitions that you had to pay.
So if a student comes in let's say the fall, that's the responsibility of the district?
That's ours.
That's our responsibility?
Yes.
Because you're anticipating it, knowing going into the fall?
Yeah.
But if a student comes after April, you're not anticipating it, so that's picked up by the other district. But you are anticipating it going into the next fall?
Correct. That's why we would pick it up in the fall. They would do the rest of the year.
And then we would pick it up in the fall?
Because we could budget if we knew, if they moved in before that date, we would know and be able to budget for it.
For the
Otherwise,
following? Okay.
we won't.
I just need to understand that, sorry.
Yeah, it gets a little complex.
You've got it down, that's what counts.
Ms. Gibbs?
So I just have a question, and I'm not saying that this is happening, but I am wondering if it did, because we're obviously tourism, people have second homes. So let's just assume somebody moves, maybe they have two homes, and then they're moving to their second home. I guess, is there like a residency requirement of?
Yeah, what typically happens, and this gets complicated, and it does happen. There is a process, and what we do is we file for an LEA, which is the local educational agency assignment through the state. And so we've had to do that. It happens more so because of foster care movement and shifts in guardianship. So not so much second homes, because you do have to prove residency, and we do go through a process to investigate that. Who's the school of origin? Is this permanent? Typically for out of district, that it doesn't happen a lot.
Okay.
But again, that is a different kind of conversation, and it's really more about children moving throughout the state, and those laws are pretty rigid, as they should be, because they want stability for kids. And so that's, when I do my special education report and overall, I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so mitigating costs, because I know you guys are going to love this, right? So in itself, our integrated preschool, our elementary programs, our middle school programs, in your packet, you didn't have Tide on there, I added Tide. Our high school programs, they themselves are mitigating costs, right? So if you flip to the next one. And the reason I'm saying that is because when I look at what it costs us to develop a program, to operate a program, versus sending a student out of district, right? That's what you want to do, is look at really the cost analysis of running these programs. And when you need a one-to-one, right? Because that's a cost, and people say, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. Well, what I do is look at what would it cost if I had to send them out of district, right? So the way I do this is I take the absolute lowest tuition that is approved through the OSD, the Operational Service Division, which is $50,000, okay? Now, that's for a day tuition, and that's to a collaborative. It's to a public school collaborative. So it's not even to like a New England Center for Children or a Latham or a Riverview, right? You're talking about 50, 60, 70, 80,000. But I took the lowest because I wanted to just really illustrate how this is a massive cost saving for us to educate our kids in our schools. So now I took the number of students, and not all of them, but the students that absolutely would have to go to an out-of-district program if we didn't have our SURFs and SAND and Shell and all of our programs. So at the elementary, middle, and high, you can see those are the numbers I chose. So what I did is I multiplied that by the $50,000, right? So that gives you, the $1.1 million, the 751,000 across, each of those levels. I then took those kids who had one-to-ones because they require it in order to be safe, in order to access their education, and multiplied it by the lowest kind of salary we would give a one-to-one. And so that's the total, right? So you see the totals with the teachers, what that costs, okay? So when we look at the difference, and we can go to the next slide because there's a difference on there, that the total out-of-district, what it would cost us if we sent those kids out would be $3 million, okay? Almost $4 million, $3.8 million. However, our cost, and again, I'm using numbers that are very skewed, right? Because that 3.8 would be probably a couple million more, depending on some of those tuitions. But our cost is about $2 million. So having these programs, and better yet, having our kids in our schools, in our communities, is almost a $2 million savings. So why do we keep building programs, and why do we look at, making sure that if a student needs a one-to-one, because we want them here first and foremost, but because we can do it. And we're providing a significant cost mitigation to support our students in their home communities. You like that, didn't you? Okay, just want to make sure. All right, so now we can move on. What's that? All right, so our extended year services, students qualify for extended year services if they're going to substantially regress from the learning that happened during the school year. And we don't want that substantial regression. All students regress, we know that. They regress anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks of learning time, right? That's why when you come back to school, you're doing a lot of reviewing and assessing. Where did we leave off? What do you remember from last year so that we can move on? So we take a lot of data to really support whether a student needs summer services or not. And so for those that do, we run a 4-week program and a 6-week program. The 6-week program is for our intensive students requiring services. And it's a 3-hour program, Monday through Thursday, because we also believe that kids should enjoy summer and they need a break, and learning is hard. So this is, each year we have to assess the number of students. The number of students have definitely increased since COVID, and part of that, and if you notice certainly the funding for it, the gap from COVID was already a substantial regression. For us with some of those students, they were already so far behind, now they're even more behind. And so we qualified more kids. because we want to make sure we can help to close that gap. So, certainly that has increased a little bit since COVID. If you just look at the numbers from 20 to now.
Melissa, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So the FY '23, the 86,304, that was the cost for ESY?
That was because
And-
we still provided it.
And is that what we budgeted for ESY?
I would, honestly, I would have to go back and give
Okay.
you the budgeted. Each year, on this one, I have a budgeted for each year and then the
Right.
actual. Usually I just put the actual, but I'm happy to get you the budgeted.
I just wonder if we're under projecting or over projecting, but you can get back to us.
Yeah, I can definitely give you for each year the budgeted and the actual. I always find the actuals, because that's what I look for the next year. We're going to be similar to that, more than that. We try to, we try to calculate it the best we can based on the numbers.
Absolutely.
Leah, will you make a note for me? Okay, thank you. Nope, that's okay. No, that's good. Just make a note for me that I gotta get that information. Our contracted services includes a lot of personnel. It's our orientation and mobility, our teacher of the visually impaired, vision specialists, home-based services, additional psychologists that we might need, board-certified behavior analyst, translators, interpreters, tutors for students. It covers a lot of additional staff that we don't have in terms of staffing, in the district. So our contracted services cover all those folks. For the budgeted for this year, it doesn't include the grant expenditure. So, for example, we're paying for the BCBA out of a grant. We had, through the IDEA, we had some recovery money, so we were, able to use additional consultants. So that amount is out of the general funds, so it doesn't include what we're also paying out of our grant funds. Okay, yes, thank you. And then operational costs, we have our legal fees. Now, you might ask that, what we budget and what our actual is much lower. And typically it is. However, if we don't budget enough money for legal and say we have to go to the Bureau of Special Ed Appeals for a hearing, that cost is going to be significant. So we need to make sure, we have money in those funds, in that line, so that it can cover it. But they are typically pretty low each year for the most part. Testing supplies, that's for all of our psychologists, our speech, our OTPT, anyone who needs to do any type of evaluation. We need to have the proper tests, and tests are expensive. So, and this year we're actually and the other part that happens with testing that's a huge fiscal burden is when they have a new edition. You only have 2 years to change out an old edition to a new edition. So what I try to do is, when I know there's a new edition, I try to do half one year, half the next year, so that it's not, such a huge cost to us. And then, of course, our instructional materials, equipment, technology, and then professional development. Those are all things that we plan for in our operational costs. So I wanted to give you a sense, yes.
I just have a question. Instructional materials, equipment, and technology in FY '23, it was at 58,000, the actual was 58,352, but then it looks like we only budgeted in '24 for 16,000, or that was that says budgeted.
It was, you're talking about the actual on the?
In FY '23, the actual was 58,352, but then in FY '24, it says budgeted only 16,000.
Yes, because we had some extraordinary equipment that was needed, and.
That was unexpected?
Yeah.
Based on the 31,000 prior?
Yep.
Okay.
And so we're not going to need as much.
Well, that's a significant difference.
Huge difference.
But
There's
even
some-
FY '22 was really high too. That was 31,955, so one would have presumed your budget would have been around 30,000 going into FY '23?
Yeah, depending on the equipment, depending on our grant funds and what we can, I can give you an example that there was a piece of equipment that cost us $10,000 for one piece of equipment. So it wasn't anticipated, we needed to purchase that, and that does come up, so we have to balance between our grant and our, operational costs of being able to get those pieces of equipment.
Unexpected stuff.
incredibly unexpected.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I would echo what Mary said, which would be helpful, because this is awesome, the way it's laid out, but a budgeted versus an actual.
Yeah.
And then maybe pulling out, like, those differences, because we purchased a this and a that. Because then
Absolutely.
it doesn't leave so much to, like, wonder why the numbers are so, like,
Absolutely.
different. And understandably, yeah, there's something, that's why I was like, whoa, something happened here. And now we're only asking for 16,047 budgeted. Should we be budgeting for more? 'Cause,
No, I'm not. No, it's a great question, and I'm happy to put those charts together with
Cool.
the different areas. All right, so our overall staffing, which I think is important, is, we have district-level staffing. We have myself. We have a physical therapist who services 4 buildings, 3 days a week, and I have a star next to that because there's a budget request there. We have a mental health coordinator, which we are so blessed with, and is doing extraordinary work, which we will do another presentation on closer to the end of the year on the work that's being done. We have a BCBA, 20 hours a week, which I pay through a grant. We have our out-of-district coordinator, that's .2. She supports all of the programs across the state that our students are in. And then we have 1 float nurse. That's a correction in there. I think it had 2 that was left over from last year. I apologize. So we went down. We decreased 1 nurse, and we now have 1 float nurse. We have across the 4 schools, in terms of team chairs, the .5 is a .5 team chair at Chatham Elementary and the .5 preschool, early childhood coordinator, which makes up a 1.0. And then 1 team chair for grades K through 4. And then each of the other schools have a team chair. And as you can see, you can see the numbers, but you can see the number of teachers, clinical staff, which includes your psychologists and adjustment counselors, and your instructional assistants, our occupational therapists. We have 2. We have a .8 and we have a 1.0 across the 4 buildings. And then our nurses and our speech. At Chatham Elementary, we have a speech therapist there 2 days a week, and you'll see an asterisk there because there is a budget request there, which I will get to. Okay. We do have 3 entitlement grants. They're federal grants. They're the IDEA grants that we get each year, and typically there's a wee bit of an increase. Sorry, that was my Irish coming out. Each year. So, and that is specifically identified for other materials, professional development, consultation, which is a huge part of the grant. We use it for transportation. We use it to support some of these instructional assistant salaries. So each year I kind of look at, what are our needs, talk to Scott and Michael and write the grant for the specifics that we're going to use it for. And similar, early childhood has actually its own. Most of that goes towards the instructional assistants in the preschool program. And this year, which was nice, this particular grant, which is called the 274 grant, it's a professional development grant. We used to get this grant every year, and it was lovely because you could really focus on professional development for our special educators. Very rarely do we get it nowadays, but this year, because there's a brand-new IEP process, significant changes to the process, they targeted money to provide professional development to get all of our educators up to speed so that we can roll it out in September. So we have that this year. So the budget considerations, and I'm hoping you feel that these are not a lot considering. The first one is speech. We have a pretty high caseload of speech across the 4 buildings. Chatham Elementary, with the increase in our programming for the SEAL program over there, has an increase in service needs, and all of our children cannot be serviced in 2 days. It's right now impossible to do that. So we're just requesting an additional .2 so that we can have a speech therapist there 3 days. We are looking for, and this is not a budget necessarily increase here because we have a grant. We have what used to be the health grant, that supported our nurse leader. Your nurse leader is required to have half-time as nurse leader, meaning doing policies, procedures, going into schools, making sure she's doing professional development. So that grant came back, and so we have a .5 nurse. She started this year, and the grant came in this year. And as a matter of fact, I believe they added, I believe it's more than 30,000 now. So that's supporting the .5, so I'm not asking for anything for that. I am asking to maintain the mental health coordinator, the 1.0, that was supported through ESSER funds. And I can tell you that if I can see Nicole fly by me, and try to stop her, I do. She is making a significant impact and doing an amazing job with our data analysis on our students' social, emotional, and behavioral health. She's in every single building. She's consulting. She's working with all of our staff. And again, I can't wait to present the work that we're doing in that realm. So I am asking that as a budget item. Our BCBA currently is contracted and paid through the grant, and I pay $90,000 for 20 hours a week through a contracted service. I can pay that same amount for a 1.0 and can still be supported through the grant. So I'm looking to hire a 1.0 BCBA. She's overworked as well. I can tell you that there's a significant need in all of our buildings for especially the behavioral health piece. So that will be covered through a grant, so I don't need to ask for funds there. Where I do need to ask for funds is to maintain the counselor at the additional counselor that we hired through ESSER at the high school in Harwich Elementary. And then the only other thing, that is not a lot of money is looking at, we have stipends for our instructional leadership, and there's been a request for several years to look at having an instructional leader for our intensive special needs programs. So that's small, and that's something I think, that's not it's not a heavy ask. But those are my budget requests, so hopefully you find those favorable.
Question.
Yes.
So back on your overall staffing, for physical therapists, you had a star, but I
That's the
don't
wrong
see
star.
it.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. The physical therapist, yes, the speech therapist and the physical therapist. The physical therapist services, I'm so sorry. I totally went over that. The physical therapist, I need an additional .2. She services 4 buildings and in 3 days, and I need another .2. I need her 4 days to get to see all the
Okay.
students. I am so sorry.
No, that's okay.
I
So
had
that-
I had the speech in my head, and that first one was speech, and then did I just jump over the PT?
Yeah, I didn't see it on there. Your budget considerations?
I missed that, didn't I? I apologize. I think was it in my report?
I just, yeah, and you've got a star there, and you said this was going to be a request, so when we go over here, I didn't see it on the request, so I was just wondering.
Yes, I might have been
Okay.
tired when I was doing that. I'm not sure, but yes, I'm sorry. So I'm looking to add .2 speech, .2 physical therapist.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is physical therapy currently at .4, you said?
She's
0.6.
currently 3 days, she's a .6.
Yeah.
And I need a .8. I need her 4 days, so she
You
can
need an
be
extra day,
1 day in
yeah.
each building to service our students.
It is hard. I can't even read what I'm writing.
The BCBA, so currently, that employee is at 20 hours at $90,000?
She's she's not an
Okay.
employee, so we have to contract through an agency, which
Right.
is far more expensive.
So is 1.0 enough BCBA? She services the whole district?
It will be enough. When she and I sat down and kind of looked at the caseload and the work that needs to be done, what she can't do now is, so what she does now is in response to very reactive, right? When we're at a point where we don't know what's happening for this child, we really need to figure it out and develop a plan and train staff. That's beautiful, but what I would love to do is before we get there, have her in and working with the programs, designing programs so that it mitigates the need for the more intensive services. That's what the BCBA should be doing. She can't do it now because all she's doing is functional behavior assessments, writing behavior plans, and training staff. I would love to have her do program design and train staff so that we don't need to get that level of intensity.
Thank you.
All right, so.
Brett Long, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, Melissa, one more question on the BCBA. That's currently paid through a grant, which we're looking to put it in the budget.
Nope, it's going to be paid.
Oh, it's still going to be paid through the grant?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I was thinking benefits. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, good question, though.
Okay, thank you.
No, that's great. I was very excited to be able to say that. I could, I can pay for the same amount of what I'm paying for except for a full-time person. So, any other questions on that? All right, so just kind of looking at our strengths, we have amazing staff. Like, every day I'm watching, I'm listening, and we have we're doing amazing stuff, and you're going to see it in, my favorite thing, the video. We have strong programs. We have a very low out-of-district enrollment, and I am happy to do a comparative analysis of out-of-district in other districts, but we do have a very low, and it's because we have very strong programs. We effectively use our consultants and our partnership with families. Obviously, we can't do any of this without our families. But it's saying that, we also want to always continue to strengthen our infrastructure, look at our programs, assess our needs. Do we need another program, that will service students who are being underserved? So it's just a consideration that, every year it looks different, right? So there's that. And then you have pictures in your packet, but I put those pictures together in a different way, or unless you printed it out without those.
Melissa, before we do the slideshow
Yes.
or the video, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So these budget considerations, we have the FY25 draft budget vote tonight. Are these considerations included in that draft budget?
They are.
Okay.
In clarification, is the PT in the
Yes.
draft budget? Okay. all
Yes,
right,
it
just want
is.
to make sure.
That was my just miss.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, ready? Oh, no, it's there. Just go to your, it was already up though, wasn't it? No, you had it somewhere else. If you go to the arrow, the down arrow.
right, let's
No,
see
go to
the
the down arrow up top there. Yep, the down, right there. Yep.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here, you can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way. Because I'm happy I'm alone if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy I'm alone if you feel like
So I just have to say, the unified basketball team, I don't know if you ever have a chance to come watch our unified team, it's so amazing. But we had a student who graduated, Rory, what month are we in? Last month. And he was on the unified basketball team, and I went to his last game in Barnstable, and he shot like a three-pointer. And
Oh, wow.
it was so amazing, you know, he was just like running around, it was like the best. And then, of course, I find out he's shot several three-pointers across the year, so there's that.
Good for Rory.
And that's, I conclude, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you, Melissa.
final questions from Melissa? All right, thank you very much. Okay, so moving right along, we will go back to our first read of a few policies. Ms. Gray, you want to walk us through them?
I sure will. Okay, the first policy that we're going to review is file JIH, searches and interviews. And as mentioned in our last meeting, this policy has been updated and has been vetted by our attorneys and the police departments in both towns. And there was one question about bathrooms, and that was 3C, all school property includes everything.
Say that one more time?
So you were asking about, if you go to 3C, all school property, that includes everything.
There was also a question in the previous, was it the previous week or the same week? Sorry, Madam Chair. I think it was the same one about whether students stayed in the classroom. Was that it? During the
They
search?
do.
They do. Is it in the policy?
Yes, please.
Melissa McGuire, Director of Student Services. So the school handbook, which has really, and where it should lie, is the more specific procedures for that. So it lies in the handbook. And so,
Okay.
which is good, because if there's any shifts or changes that need to happen, it's easier to do that than in a policy. So when we vetted this through the chiefs and the police and the attorneys, they looked at the language. But, so what you're asking is in fact in the procedures, in the policy.
So we've already
I mean,
put it in the handbook.
Student handbook.
It's already in the handbook, okay. Because this was based on the presentation we got, was it the fall or the spring?
From the students, it was in the
It
spring.
was in the spring. And then we had, we had a follow-up, or was that the same night that Officer Clark was here?
I feel like they were two different nights.
Yeah, maybe he came in the fall? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so I guess my question is, this is a school policy and the other is in a handbook. So
This is a district policy.
This is the district policy and the other is handbook. So which overrules the other?
So it's not so much an overruling, because policy is supposed to be a little bit more general, and this is kind of specific because.
So this one's the general.
It's general, so,
Okay.
and it's a little bit more specific than you would typically have in a policy because it's new, right? The open air sniff is new, and there's been, several cases related to that, and so they've made some rulings on that open air sniff is in fact, does not violate any constitutional rights, because they're not actually, the police are not actually doing anything from that. It's just an indicator. Then the administrators step in, and that's where the procedures come in the handbook. So
Yeah.
policy should be the regulation, and then procedures should be what we create in the schools. So.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm just, in a layman's term, if I was a parent and I had a problem with something, I would go, well, what's the policy on this? And then I would look to the policy. I wouldn't look to the handbook, because the handbook to me is more like rules. So my question, I guess, is in 3C, should it say something like C handbook procedures regarding 3C? Like all school, because then I'd be like, if I'm the parent, I'm reading, I'm like, okay, all school property such as lockers, classrooms, blah, 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 storage areas may be searched. Okay, well, that doesn't say where, when, why, or how, but it does in our handbook, based on procedures, so maybe it should say, see procedures in handbook. I don't,
Do we have other policies that refer to the handbook?
great question.
I'm just wondering if we're bleeding
I don't know, I just, that's my common sense, being like, all right, well, that didn't answer my question. And then the district would fall back to, well, it is in our handbook.
Right.
I think they're hand in hand, because
Okay.
whatever you have in the policy, and, I mean, for example, like the travel policy of the policy, and then we have all these procedures that don't necessarily, fall in line with the
Okay.
policy, but I think they're synonymous, the policies, your handbook.
Okay.
Question, comment, Madam Chair. And I apologize, I should know this. So when we talk about handbook, there's one handbook, or is there a handbook per building?
For building.
Okay, so that makes sense
They are
then.
being-
So the policy does need to be a little bit more generic, because things will vary from school to school. So that makes sense to me. Okay, that's good. The other thing I'll just say to
don't
the
we take them out of the
policy
room?
subcommittee, thank you for changing the word interrogations to interviews. We are talking about students, so thank you for that.
Well, Ryan.
Oh, we have a sidebar?
What's wrong?
Sorry, sidebar.
Missy Brett Long?
Why is it me? What's wrong? Okay, then I moved to D, and then I was like, okay, individuals shall not be subjected to a search by dogs. Okay. But if they're in the classroom,
I believe that the search and the open air sniff are different,
okay,
but I
thank
think
you.
we're just, thank you.
The purpose of the dog and the open air, it's literally open air, but if it's
Correct.
found on the person,
Okay, so, so, the search
Yes.
is, which can't happen, okay?
Right.
Police can't do that. Our
Okay.
SROs can't do that, so.
our school,
administrators
our
can.
SRO.
Our SRO cannot, but our
Correct.
administrators can. So this is very specific to a search, meaning going through one's pockets, one's backpack, one's locker.
Got it.
This is relative to the open air. That is not a search. That is a sniff, and what
Sorry, it's funny sounding, but
happens
Yeah.
is the dog alerts.
Got it.
I believe that's the correct terminology.
To an
I saw Tommy
a- to a-
somewhere.
to an
It
area.
alerts. If the dog alerts,
Yeah.
the SRO immediately gets the administrator.
got it.
They then can search if there is a concern about a student that may have something.
And that's in our handbook in procedures.
That is, it also, and that actually it specifies with that where it talks about, actually gives like steps 1, 2, and 3, that, kids remain in their seat, dog goes up and down the aisle. If there's an alert, then an administrator is immediately notified. So that's all in the handbook.
Procedures. Great, thank you, Melissa.
Do we feel comfortable with this one, or do we want to actually have the SRO here to answer some more specific questions? Because it's,
Comfortable.
Question.
James?
So are you asking, are we comfortable to move it to the next meeting for a vote? Is that your question?
yes.
I am.
I am.
Missy Brett Long?
Oh, are we taking a vote?
No.
Oh,
Are you okay
consensus?
with this one going to second reading?
Yeah, great, perfect.
I'm sure our SRO would be happy to chat with you, or any of us.
No, good.
Okay. Moving on to IHBG.
Yes. IHBG, homeschooling. There's only one very small change here, taking out that one line.
I like that line.
Yeah. File IE, again, small changes, added they to number 2, and added post-grad, because that was missing.
Any questions?
Good. And IHBEA, English Language Learners, made updates to the language and no longer referencing the No Child Left Behind Act.
All right. We're good. These will all come back for a second read at our next meeting. Excellent. All right, moving right along to the big ticket item.
Literally.
No offense. To the FY25 draft budget, which we do have a vote tonight.
Michael's is set to music.
I'll be singing. I'll be writing.
Here she is. Did you get rid of Scott?
No, I didn't.
I'm sitting here and I'm completing fitness circles. I did, she just
All right.
closed her ranks. Yeah, I know, right? Must be not talking.
All right, good evening, school committee. Just while we're waiting for the slides, I'm here. My name is Michael McMillan, I'm the school business manager, and I'm providing an update tonight on the FY25 budget and where we're up to now. So this is one of at least 2 votes you'll take in the budget, and the reason we do one now is because under the regional agreement, we have to provide a copy of the budget to each of the towns, and it gets placed in the library. We'll also send these slides to the towns so that they have a number for their working budget drafts as well. But then we'll take another vote again in sort of in around March time, and that's scheduled. That's in our timeline. We'll take another vote in March when it'll be updated with other information we've had, which we've received, like the state funding, which is the biggest one, and health insurance, which is also a big deal. So, and the towns know that that's coming, so they know there's one now and then one in March. And then, as there was last year, we may have subsequent ones as we go through the sort of process of negotiations and discussions with the towns. So, at least 2, maybe more.
Question, before you jump in.
Yeah.
So could you remind me what the public hearing on the budget is when?
February 8th.
Okay, good. So it
Yeah.
is before we take the second vote?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Yep.
6 o'clock.
At 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Be there. There'll be standing room only, I'm sure.
That's right.
We hope.
Yeah. We need to do something controversial if you want a lot of people there. So,
We don't need to do anything.
double-edged, yeah, it's double-edged swords.
Asking for trouble.
Yeah. All right. Is this going to work? It's not. Okay. All right. So, these slides are very similar to the ones we presented in December, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing because some of those kind of important topics to cover, and in December you got the slides just before the meeting, so if any questions or thoughts have come up since then, this gives everybody another opportunity. So I just wanted to, and it's a little longer, I added a couple of extra slides. This first one is just about the process. I just wanted so you understand how we put the budget together. So basically we start just by working out how much we're going to spend, and then we look at what revenue is available to offset the costs before we assess the requests to the towns, and then we calculate the assessments. So there's a kind of 3-step process, and any one of those 3 can still change until the last day. There are some budget development priorities which we've had principles which we've had in place for some time now. We're driven by the strategic plan, and that generates much of the requests we see from the principals when we have them. There's the class sizes, which we seek to keep within. We try to have this data-driven. We try and make it as transparent as possible with, for example, the budget workshop we have. We'll share this information with staff and the community, families in the wider community. we do, and this is something I'm sure that will come up again as we go through this process, but we do recognise the financial environment of both towns and keep that in mind as we develop the budget. And we have also added a 5-year projection so we can see this in context, which I presented back in November. All right. Then there are a couple of assumptions which are still underlying this budget and which may change in the coming months. One is our health insurance is 10%, which we should get those numbers, the real numbers, in early February. School choice and charter schools, these charter student numbers were estimated to remain consistent with those reported in we started with FY23. We got updated figures today on school choice, so you'll see that will be reflected in later presentations of the budget, but not in this one. We're assuming stable enrollment and that our existing and incoming students can continue to require the additional support that's been needed due to COVID and everything that's been going on there. So those are kind of the key underlying assumptions, some of which will change over the next few months. So the budget now, and I wonder if we're going to get the budget that's presented and will be voted on, or I'm presenting to be voted on, is $47,013,572. So that is, I don't know if there's a little box that's supposed to come up to show that it's $95,000 less than the budget was presented in just before Christmas in December. And I'm going to show you where that comes from in a couple of slides. Oh yeah, there it is. Ta-da. All right, that's the most exciting thing I'm going to do tonight. So this is obviously difficult to see, but these blue lines represent the total budget going back to since the beginning of the district, and really the last one at the end is FY25, so it kind of shows that in context. So the budget increase that we're presenting would be a significant increase compared to prior years, and I'm going to show the reasons that this is kind of an exceptional year. So there's a number of things driving the increase in budget. These were all green last time. I don't know if you remember. I changed them to reds. They didn't seem like good things.
That means no.
So you'll be happy to hear I'm spending my time very productively. So health insurance is a huge number right now. That's almost, it's $250,000. I really hope that 10% will be lower. So I really hope that the increases to health insurance when they come through will not be as much as 10%, and we'll see that number come down.
Are you hearing anything?
Not yet. We haven't had a meeting actually. We have the next meeting I think is when we'll set the rates. So
Okay.
we did set the retirement, because the retirement rates get set at a different time, and they were set lower. They were more around 6%. So, so we will receive a recommendation so we'll get the numbers from the health insurance companies, like Blue Cross Blue Shield, will give us why their rates are changed, and then the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group will have to decide how much of that change we pass on to members, and including the employers, and how much we take from the group itself, because it has a balance, and that's all about balancing the risk of running out of money, because there's additional costs related to running the health insurance as well as the rates we pay to towns. There's also, if people go over a certain rate, there's costs related to that we have to pay. So it's a complicated formula. One of the reasons the rates have been relatively low is the group did build up a fairly good fund, whereas, it was collecting more money than it was spending year to year. And so a couple of times we've made efforts to take money out of the fund to help reduce the rates that were charged to the districts and the members and employees. But that's not, those are one-off. You can't keep doing that, or eventually you'll not have any money left. And that's kind of also that's where there's the risks of we do have much higher costs and we're expecting we can dip into those funds. So it's about a risk. How low do you want that fund to be? And we will review that again in January when we set the rates. The budget requests, which I will talk about, there's also capital and utilities. We are looking at a number of capital projects. One of the big ones is trying to start doing the siding and trim at the middle school, We're also looking at the high school roof, but that's a big increase. Utility costs, we have a new contract for electricity, and unfortunately that's much higher than our prior contract. And transportation costs have gone up related to the number of runs we're doing, salaries, and fuel. Then two other big drivers, and really this is what makes this a kind of exceptional year. One of them is we had a number of positions which were funded from ESSER, which I know we spoke about before. Those positions now need to receive funding from somewhere. And we also have negotiations ongoing right now with our employee groups in order to set new salaries for the coming 3 years. And the district's salaries are lagging behind those of our neighbours. And so we anticipate a higher than normal increase to the salary costs for next year, which is necessary if we want to keep attracting and maintaining staff. Also within that heading though, we're also looking at turnover, which has helped to reduce costs a little, and also the renorming class. So when we've looked at the class size aims that the district has, in some cases classes are smaller than than our target, and so if we renorm class sizes to be back within those ranges, we'll be able to reduce the number of positions, which does unfortunately mean reducing the number of staff, but that helps to offset the other cost increases we're seeing here. But this is, the challenge here is that we're in negotiations right now, so we don't know the outcome of those negotiations, so there's a lot of assumptions based in these numbers at the moment. So, and then in green now, there are a couple of things that have helped reduce our costs out of district tuition, although I know that's also a moving target and can change. Every year we have debt payment on the high school construction, and the way the schedule works, it goes down a little every year. And we have a gap in our IT leases for our Chromebooks, and so we have a saving of $30,000 for this year. But that will be back next year, so that's actually just instead. So that essentially that $30,000 is helping to fund our capital, because that's like a one-off saving for a one-off cost. This is theory. And so really, this is where that $95,000 I mentioned at the start, that's where this is. So last time we presented, and I'm sorry, this slide's a little small, but the last time I presented this table, there was one less line, and the line at the bottom, these are the budget requests that we've received. They're identified with the administrative team and the principals and so on. And the lines in white are the items that have been funded, and the lines in grey are the ones that have not been funded. And the line at the bottom of the white section is professional development and for high quality instruction and wellness, and linked to the portrait of the graduate and the strategic plan. And the last time we presented this, that was $139,000. And following a very robust discussion at our school committee finance subcommittee, we've reduced that $139,000 by $95,000. And that's what's reduced the overall total. But just in the interest of transparency, and so that we're still keep a track of that, I didn't just take the $95,000 off, I moved it down into the grey unfunded area, because it was a request which at the moment is not funded. And so that reduction alone helps to reduce the budget. Yes.
So, like, I don't see, so weren't, tell me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
just tell me to.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like the mental health coordinator, some of the interventionists, like some of the positions that were funded through ESSER are not on this list?
They are now included in the budget.
They are, so
Yes.
they're even
They are
above
there.
this
Yes.
list?
Yes. Sorry, that's a great question. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
Good.
so
they're
those,
included.
all of the intervention
Yes.
positions that we added last year
Are included.
and
Yeah.
the mental health coordinator
Yep.
is included in the budget
Yes.
for this. So
Yep.
the only thing outstanding is what's in gray.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. And I'll include those I'll list out those positions next time. In the
Okay.
next iteration
You'll break
of
it down.
slides. Okay. So that's really like part one of the budget development, where we really identify how much we want to spend next year. And then, well, not how much we want to spend, but how much we want to ask to spend. So, and then part 2 is where we look at what funds are available to reduce the assessments, essentially. Before we go out to the towns and ask for their assessments, how much are we able to fund the budget from other revenue? So at the moment, this is an estimate based on historic trends and the data that I'm aware of, but we will not get these numbers until late January, and then they will change, as we go through the governor's, as we go through the budget process at the state level, these numbers can continue to change. The big ticket item here is, so Chapter 70 is the main source of funding we receive and the main way that the state funds education. And we expect to see a small increase from that, just related to the overall increases from the state. The big reduction here and why this number is actually lower than last year is because of transportation aid. And transportation aid has gone down a little bit. Really, the big change is that there's 2 parts to that transportation aid. One is the money we plan to receive this year and money that we have left over from receiving in previous years. And we have money left over sometimes because we budget less than we ultimately receive, because we get a number from the state that says we're going to give you, say, $50,000. That's what we budget. At the end of the year, they actually decide to give us $100,000. So that difference of $50,000 we can take and use again and use in a later year. In the last few years, we've had quite a lot of money like that we've been able to push ahead to a future year. It's been like $100,000 or $70,000. This year, it's like, I can't remember exactly, but it's like $12,000. And that big reduction is much less than we've had to draw on in previous years. So that's reflected there. That could change. If we actually, when the state budget comes up, if they actually give us more transportation money, that will reduce that negative and help increase the offset. But just so you're aware, that's an unfortunate blip that we have to deal with this year. And what all that means is, and so in part 3 of the budget, so we've kind of looked at how much we believe we would like to spend, how much can be funded by revenue, and the rest essentially falls to the towns to pay for. And we split this up based on a number of different factors, but essentially it comes down to each town pays for their own elementary school, and then everything else is split up between the 2 towns based on enrollment. So you kind of plug in our budget number. This is how that formula plays out, and really it's the dark green line at the bottom that is what really matters. And right now the increase is $1.9 million for Harwich, 6.6%, giving them an assessment of $30.4 million. And for Chatham, I think it's 7.7%, $751,000, and $10.46 million assessment. So if you were to vote to approve this budget, those are the numbers we'll pass to the towns. That's the numbers they'll then put in their budget, and those are the numbers they'll grill us on when we go and present to them. I mean, it's a challenge. We have this. We go through this whole rigmarole every year. It's frustrating because we know that numbers are going to change, but they will. When we go to the towns, they will challenge us on some of those underlying assumptions, all those green and red circles. They'll challenge us on those numbers and why why the red ones aren't smaller and the green ones aren't bigger. So they may, so while this number changes, some of the rationale will definitely be up for debate with the towns.
Michael, Madam Chair, I don't have it in front of me, but can you remind us of what Harwich's increase percentage was in?
0.2. It was 6.8.
6.8.
It was 6.8.
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
Chatham's was 8%. Yeah.
And Chatham
Was 8.
was the
Yeah.
8%. Okay, which is now 7.7. Okay, great, thank you. So we've decreased that. Yay.
Yeah.
Keep moving.
And so that $95,000 was a district cost, so essentially got split between the both equally. All right, if you go to the next slide, this is my last one. So this is just kind of for interest. So basically, each one of these lines is our total budget, and it's split up based on the funding. And the funding is either the orange block, which is Harwich assessment, the grey block, which is the Chatham's assessment, the blue line, which is other revenue, and the yellow, which is the state funding. And I think the very one small one on top is E&D. Oh, blue's excess and deficiency. And that excess and deficiency, just as a reminder, is the money we have left over essentially at the end of last year, we're able to use to offset the budget, and we take $800,000 from that to help offset the budget. So you can see how things have changed over the last few years and how they would change from last year to from this year to next. And what we're hoping is that, when we get the budget, state funds, those grow a little, that yellow block grows a little, and then we have less to split up between the two towns. And when we get the health insurance and some of our other numbers, we're able to actually reduce the size of the whole bar, so it's less for everybody. So fingers crossed. That's it. Oh, no, it's not. So next steps, what happens next? So we will share this information with the towns, providing it's approved tonight, and then we will start to update the numbers as we get more information. So the state revenue, school choice, I've talked about all this a lot already. We continue to see challenge in utilities and maintenance, and the minimum local contribution will come from the state as well. So everything's still to play for.
Questions? See Rilla?
I don't know if at this point you want us just to report out as finance subcommittee, rather than after we vote, because we're on the agenda for finance sub reporting out, but finance sub is reflected in what he's presented right now, so I don't know.
Let's do
Prior
it.
to vote, unless you want to do it and then vote at the very end for the budget, we can do that too.
No, I think we can do.
Okay, so we'll just add to the conversation now. So on behalf of the finance subcommittee, just reporting out that Michael and Dr. Carpenter presented pretty much everything, the same thing you're seeing right now, except for what Michael pointed out on page, what page was it? 10? Yeah, on page 10, where there was, our needs and wants under the project, and there was an item that we moved around. We took a lot of time on these, moving things around, moving numbers, trying to figure out what was in the best interest of the district, and then simultaneously trying to figure out what was the best interest for the two towns as well. So the finance subcommittee, I would say on behalf of myself and everyone, Terry and Tina were there, we do support what was presented this evening. We feel like it's the best effort we can put forward at this time towards both towns and maintaining everything and all the integrity within the district that we want, and trying to give everyone what they've asked for, which we fully agree is very reasonable this year. It's just unfortunate that everything's so much more expensive, and that right now we don't have numbers. Remember that 10% for health insurance is built in there, and there's a lot of other outstanding things that aren't reflected yet, and we're hoping that continues to help bring this percentage increase down. That's the goal. But for right now, for a first draft, I would applaud Dr. Carpenter and Michael on work really well done, and being part of the subcommittee conversation the other night. Just a lot of thoughtful comments and kind of problem solving went into it. So it was a long Friday. It was a Friday night meeting.
Yeah, Friday night.
It was a long Friday night meeting.
Yeah.
It's what we did.
Yep.
So that's really how important it was to us. So if that measures up to anything, we do endorse what was presented tonight, and certainly can answer any further questions if anyone has anything that Michael hasn't addressed already. And if anyone else from the subcommittee wants to make a comment, please feel free.
Great report.
Any further questions for the finance committee? All right, excellent. So, Dr. Carpenter, would you like to say anything?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
No, I first of all, I'd just like to just say what I often say this time of the year is, budgets oftentimes my experience get better as we get clarity. And I think that's what Mike also trying to convey. As we get more and more of these numbers, I think we're going to track, and we hope to see that which number track closer to 6% than where it currently.
Okay, great. Thank you. So do I have a motion?
Should we put the numbers up?
Ms. Seabrett Long?
Yeah, I don't think you didn't prepare one, Michael, right? There's not one in the packet. I can
No,
do,
Right? Page
Yeah,
12.
for the budget, first of all, which is on page 5.
Is it just gonna be one, or is there gonna be two?
Yeah.
So we have got in the habit of doing, I want to say 2. So
Yes.
one, the one, the budget, and 2, the assessments.
So first page 5 and then page 12.
Okay. All right, so motion to approve the FY '25 draft budget. Do you want me to say all the,
You can just that top.
the
right?
of five,
In the
of
amount.
47 mil, the amount of $47,013,572.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, number 2.
Okay. And then, which page am I on now?
12.
Green
Oh,
one,
thank
yeah.
you, 12. Motion to approve the draft budget as presented, total assessment for the town of Harwich of $30,393,653, and total assessment for the town of Chatham of $10,461,947.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep working at it.
Watch this space.
Thank you for your
I'll do my
Friday night
best.
with us, Michael. That was
It's the
fun.
best
Yeah.
Friday night I've ever had.
Good, what else do you want to do, right?
Yes.
There was no pizza.
No pizza.
All right, moving right along, a negotiation subcommittee reporting out?
Yes, so the negotiations committee has been meeting, and we're doing an excellent job. We meet with, both as a subcommittee and then with the whole teachers and other units together right now, doing a collaborative kind of meeting for looking at things that are the same. And it's been great. The food has been great, and
You have food.
we have food. yeah.
Okay.
So is there anything anyone wants to add? I think we're moving along fine. Actually, we have a Friday meeting tomorrow, our subcommittee. But it's in Zoom with cocktails, so.
Maybe minus the cocktails.
Yeah.
Yes, no cocktails will be served.
And our next teacher association regarding Unison and the proposals will be next week.
Right, next Thursday.
Yes. So we meet as just our subcommittee tomorrow, and then we'll meet with the union next week.
Great.
So we're moving right along.
Yes, we are.
Thank you also for meeting on Friday.
Yes, thank you.
There's only so many days in a week.
There are only so many.
Okay, any questions? Excellent. Moving right along to the superintendent's report. Dr.
I'll be quick. It's a little humbling, having broken my ankle and destroyed my knee in a fall a little bit before Christmas. I won't be at our next meeting because I'll be having my knee finally put back together that morning. So probably won't be in good shape for the school committee that evening. And unlike Carrie, I won't be coming to you live from a hospital bed. In terms of just recognitions, there was a really kind of neat thing that happened earlier this week where WCAI came in and did a feature about our high school, life in our high school. And it was interesting how it sort of, it started off with Steve Dunker reaching out and wanting to do a story on the sort of the great civics programs that we put on and the work that John Dixon does taking students through the Iowa caucuses. And that little idea started to snowball and became, hey, maybe we could actually go and sort of feature what life is like in a high school. So, so they had, they came in and did a whole morning segment on our school that had everything from the jazz band to morning announcements to what it's like in a golf class to sounds of a cafeteria. So in addition to the civics work. But you can go onto the WCAI website, and they have a little story there, and you can listen to the audio from the compilation that they put.
Excellent, thank you very much. Any comments or questions for Dr. Carpenter?
Good luck with your surgery.
Good luck, we'll be thinking about you. All right,
Looking
so,
forward to it. Badly.
so the only thing left is motion to adjourn?
I'll
We
second
have-
that.
But we did have the presentation of the warrants.
Yes.
Yes, I heard a second.
Who was the motion? I'm sorry.
Jackie and then Terry. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
We are adjourned at 7:51.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.